Your brain isn't broken. You're not broken. Despite what thoughts you're having, what emotions you're having, the incessant noise going on in the mind. We often believe every thought that comes into our mind. Every emotion that we have, we tend to believe it as if it is true. And sometimes we end up feeling crazy. And if we don't feel crazy, we feel at least broken. And perhaps you're not broken. You're in the state of being awake and aware enough and ready to heal. And what I'm going to be discussing in this live stream, and I want to welcome everybody from all around the globe. We get people from North America, down here in Australia where I'm broadcasting this live stream, all through South America, all throughout the world. So welcome to everybody. And please, I always encourage people when they are joining live or even watching the replay, engage in the chat or the comment section. That really helps me create community. It helps you feel connected. And I want to add value to you today. So I've got some notes I want to read, and what we're discussing really is the brain, the thinking, why we overthink, and how we can get out of this perpetual loop that we often find ourselves in. You know, for me, I'll share a bit of a personal story here. I'll open up with a level of vulnerability. You know, when I was really young, I was 2 years old, and my father left, as happens for a lot of young children, even more commonly so today than when I was young. And I always had this fear of abandonment, because when your primary caregiver abandons, the pattern of abandonment represents itself as a traumatic response through most of your relationships. It's a part of how our brains are wired. They're wired to protect us. And we have thoughts and emotions that come up in our relationships that are often just not true. They are a result of the trauma in which we have experienced. Now, perhaps you can let me know in the chat what it has been for you. What is the fear? What is the event that happened in your life that scares you most? For me, it's abandonment. For me, it's the fear that those that I love, that are closest to me, will repeat that pattern. And when I do talk therapy with people, and I think it's a incredible method that we can submit ourselves to, and really what it is about, it's not so much about the practitioner. It is about you having a space where you feel comfortable, where you are seen and you're heard, and you're able to process your own inner dialogue and emotions. You see, if we're just believing every thought in our mind, every emotion that we have, we end up being held captive to our emotions. The brain is wired for pattern recognition. I want to read this. And threat detection. When you've been hurt, the brain starts running loops to solve or prevent pain. This is what it's doing. It's a protective mechanism. Overthinking is your brain's attempt to gain control over something that is unpredictable or feels unsafe. And who relates to that? Hello, Soren. Thanks for tuning in. Maybe, Soren, you can let me know, what is your main fear? I know Soren is great at interacting with some of these live streams that we do. So this whole challenging area, I think this is more common than we want to talk about. Sometimes we're overly focused on positivity and we're not really dealing with some of the internal layers that we think we've healed. Come on, who knows what I'm talking about? Sometimes we suppress emotion. Soren says, same as yours, abandonment. And this is the thing, isn't it? And so I think it's healthy when we discuss those things. What it does is it gives us an opportunity to get all of this stuff in here, these thoughts, these emotions, articulate them out, and particularly in the presence of another person. And you tend to feel better. And of course, healing is not a destination, it is a journey. A lot of people don't like when I say that, and although that comes from a really honest place of experience, I think it's a journey rather than a destination. Now that can seem daunting, doesn't it? Because we're conditioned to want to arrive, to solve and to fix. But what if it is just a journey? And we learn through it. For me, it was, and Soren, I know you relate to this, it gave me my sense of abandonment, my sense of being alone and fear and going through what I did with my father has given me the empathy, understanding, and compassion to really work with other people. Now, that is a gift that I like to share with one-on-one people that I work with. And I know it's helped and blessed their lives. Now, if I hadn't had that experience, if I hadn't had to walk and sometimes crawl, and let me tell you, even myself as a practitioner, I still have those days where it feels like crawling. Sometimes it's a sprint, sometimes it's a crawl, sometimes it's a slow walk. But nonetheless, I think vulnerability is important, and I think that we need to share our struggles so that we know we're not alone. Now, I'm just going to read some of the comments here. When we replay, and hello, Tammy, great that you joined, and great to see you, Soren. And I love people like Tammy and Soren because they've been such a pivotal part of this community and this journey for a long time. And Tammy, we're talking a little bit about, I know you've just tuned in, we're talking a little bit about my own journey of abandonment. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about overthinking. We're talking about emotions and how we kind of walk through this stuff. Now, I have said for years now, the best form of therapy that I really believe in is talk therapy. And I've done it for over 25 years, if not longer. I think I started in my schooling days, which was a lot longer than that. And I've always appreciated a safe space to articulate and to communicate. Often we don't find that in our closest personal relationship because there are costs involved. And we often, some of us are just trying to survive day to day, let alone we're going to go into deep discussion with another person. That's not to say that you can't have some of those deeper discussions. But I think that the therapy space, if you feel comfortable, is such a great place to process some of your emotions. So what does overthinking look like? It's replaying those conversations over and over and over in your head. It might be reliving the trauma that you went through. For me, with my father, it was for so long unforgiveness, an inability to release the anger that I held towards him. I felt deeply hurt. I watched the suffering of my mother, and even up until this day, the effects of her own abandonment. And of course, when we're children, we're so susceptible, aren't we, to those around us that are meant to take care of us. And we often derive a sense of self from how those individuals treated us. For me, it was abandonment. For others, it's an abusive parent or an abusive family member or somebody else that's mistreated them in some way. And often we derive our sense of self and our value, and then that sets the course of our whole life. We can't change the past, but what we can do is we can release, we can articulate, we can share, we can create community where we can heal together. Healing isn't a destination, and I think if it really was, more people would be living it. And we tend to repeat what we don't really deal with. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be stuck in torment and suffering. I'm certainly not going there. When you talk about the process of healing, it's not stagnant, it's fluid. And so when I learned to, and I'll get to your comment in a minute, Soren, when I learned to release the resentment, the anger towards my father, boy, it liberated me to arrive at a place where the negativity and the anger just isn't there anymore. Now, am I still affected somewhat by what happened? Sure. But it ceases to control my life. Sure, it presents itself in other relationships. It can rear its ugly head. I can see the pattern emerge. But that is when we do the work. That is when it's so important to talk. Reason I'm going kind of down this tangent, because it's personally affected me over the last few weeks. I've been within a community that has had 2 people commit suicide and 2 people that have attempted suicide, and those suicide attempts failed, and both of them are on life support. I had a partner, I haven't shared this before, I had a partner that committed suicide years ago, and that was incredibly challenging. We weren't partners at the time, but just hearing about it was incredibly distressing. And some of those things you're reminded of every day. Now, I always ask the question, if somebody had the process to talk about it, would it have been different for those individuals? What do you think? Let me read some of your comments. What should alcoholics do? Well, actually, I had an ex that was an alcoholic, not the one I was referring to, another one. Such a good question. I have great sympathy for people that have suffered with substance abuse. You know why people do it? Doesn't make them bad. Generally, they're numbing the emotions. You know, they're in such turmoil and hurt. And I know sometimes even with alcoholism, they have said many times it can be a genetic disposition to that. Often it's trauma, it's numbing. Let's not demonize the individual. Let's meet them with a place of compassion. I think when it comes to alcoholism, one of the most effective ways that people have overcome is Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, more commonly known as. Now, why that is so powerful is because people get together regularly, they support each other, and it's a form of talk therapy. They're discussing it. They're sharing their lived experience. And then in addition to that, there is a step program, a 12-step program with that. And one of the steps is to surrender. And surrender is a common theme I talk a lot about through my live streams, my videos, my podcasts, is this action of surrendering or letting go of holding on and gripping on and giving it to something that is bigger than yourself. Now, in AA, it doesn't specifically have to be God in the traditional Christian context or the Islamic context, or it's generally defined as higher power or something greater than yourself. And then when you relinquish that, you surrender that, that's kind of when the miracle takes place, because you're no longer carrying the burden. Tammy said, maybe it just depends on how strong emotionally they are. You know, we can oscillate between times of emotion, can't we? Sometimes we can feel incredibly strong, resilient, and then other days, like I've gone through some challenging weeks, I feel like crawling some days. And I feel incredibly weak, and that's where it really brings me to my knees, and then I reach out to God. In my case, it's God, because I have a faith. I reach out to God and I surrender and I pray and I ask for grace. Even if it's just for that day, I say, God, give me grace for today, just today, to get through today without trying to look at the whole future and have it all worked out. Because I don't think we ever fully work it out. I think we're in process. This is a really honest discussion today. Sometimes people want to hear all the fluff and all of the positivity and all of that, and there's a time and space for that. But I think sometimes we just have to be real, don't we? We have to be real with our own emotions. We have to be vulnerable with others, like I'm being today, because guess what that does? It makes us feel not alone, not isolated, and we bring what is generally suppressed and we bring it into the light. We say, hey, I'm dealing with that, and I'm not alone in my struggles. I like that, what you've said, Soren. The trauma needs to be seen and heard by alchemizing it. And that's an important word, alchemization. Do we have any other questions at this point? I want to share some statistics with you as well. And this may help some of you. Tammy says, we need to be open and honest so we know we're not alone. Yeah. And there are safe spaces. Like, here is a safe space. Most people in your life aren't going to know that you're tuning into this channel and hearing this thing. So this is a safe space for you to not feel alone. Now, I'm trying to find my notes because I had some great statistics to share with you. And often when I hit print on my printer, it seems to get lost in in the process. So let me refer to my phone because there were some important things I wanted to share with you. This is important as well. The brain is wired for pattern recognition. When you've been hurt, your brain starts running loops to solve and prevent pain. Overthinking is your brain's attempt to gain control over something that feels unpredictable or unsafe. And this is the part of the amygdala where trauma often hijacks our whole nervous system. Now, here's the statistic I wanted to share with you. According to the National Science Foundation, 80, and this blew me away when I read this statistic, 80% of our thoughts are negative. 80%. Now, that's a national statistic, that 80%, and I'd imagine this is an American statistic, and that would be probably mirrored in most other Western countries and even other countries around the world. But 80% of the thoughts that we think are negative. What does that show us? And then I'll say this, 95% of our thoughts are repetitive, and that's the loop. So this gets into what many talk about as being neuroplasticity, the brain forming neuro pathways in the brain that light up predictively, and we have the same thoughts over and over again. And it's really the area of the soul. When we look at the soul, when I define the soul, I call it the mind, will, and emotions. The spirit, that's something separate. But when we talk about the soul, it's the mind, the will, and the emotions. And this is the area that we need to work on. This is the area that we're perfecting day by day. You know, I would argue that the spirit, which should lead you, is in a completely different space, untouched by a lot of this stuff. And when you really submit to the spirit and you work on the level of the soul, this is where the healing takes place. Now, back to my notes. Why does talking work? Why is it important that we talk about it? The moment you put your words, your inner words, out into the world, we break the loop. When you speak your thoughts to somebody safe, it regulates the nervous system. Therapy helps the brain move from ruminating to integration. So we're breaking that neural pathway. We're kind of breaking the circuitry, if you like. We're stopping the perpetual loop. I love that, Tammy. False evidence appearing real, or false ego appearing real. And thanks again, Tammy and Soren, for being so engaging in the chat. You know, it really helps with more people seeing the content when you guys engage. And even if you're watching the replay, just say hello, post a comment, give a like to this, because when you do so with YouTube, it triggers the algorithm for more people to get this message. And in light of what I said, knowing 4 people, 2 that unfortunately passed away within my community, and 2 that are, you know, in a life-threatening situation, I just really want to focus the work that I do on helping people mentally. The world's ever increasingly becoming more complex, and we really need to get back to some of the basics community, supporting each other, being there. Think about those people that I just spoke about. If they had great support networks in place, if they were doing talk therapy, if they were processing the emotions and getting that negativity out, would have things been different for them? I think it's one of the saddest things when someone takes their life. Not only for the individual because of the lost potential, but the damage and the trauma that it inflicts upon their loved ones. I don't think someone really wants to end their life when they do that. What I think they want to do is they want to end their suffering. And that's why I've committed my life to doing the work that I do, to help people, to do one-on-one talk therapy, to open up discussions like this, so that I can prevent some of those unfortunate things from happening. Welcome from India. Great that you joined in. It's hard living in this world for many. Yeah, it is. And I don't think we discuss it enough. You know, life is challenging. Life's challenging for me. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have the same experience. You know, even you have times, it's like seasons. You have seasons where things are growing, and then you have seasons where it feels like everything is dying and being lost. But there is, thank goodness, a seasonality to life, and it's great to remind us of that when we are going through a storm. If you need somebody to talk to, and you may not, maybe it's you, Tammy, maybe, excuse me, and water went down the wrong way. I try to hydrate my voice, and sometimes it goes down the wrong way when I drink, when I'm sort of speaking into the mic. So just give me a second. I'm offering one-on-one talk therapy for people, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the link now for that, because you may need to speak to somebody, and you've come across this, and I often see this time and time again with these live streams. People synchronistically just tune in at the right time because they needed to hear this. If you want to do talk therapy, if you want to work with me, if you feel comfortable with me, I would love for you to have a place to come and do talk therapy. It's one-on-one. It's confidential. I've got over 6 years experience with working with people. I've worked with every type of person, from really well-known people in society to people that are, really suffering in life. So I have a good scope of working with life's challenges. And remember, it's not my ability so much, it's the person's ability to be able to process their emotions. And it's my job to make them feel safe and secure. And that's what I endeavor to do with all of my sessions. Now, let me get to one more comment before I end this. It's about that 30-minute mark. I don't tend to like to go over. I've been trying mostly for the past few months, trying my best to bring it all together. And it's great that you can be that honest. And I'd love to work with you if you're open to that and you're available to do so. And if you are watching the replay, I will post the link where you can make a booking with me directly. If money is a challenge for you, and my prices are really reasonable, by the way, but if that is a challenging thing for you, I'm going to put my email here. You can reach out to me and I'll offer you support in any other way that I can. I never want to turn anybody away, certainly not for any financial reason. So I'm here for you. And if you don't feel personally comfortable with me, I've got some other great practitioners that I work with, some wonderful female practitioners. If you feel more comfortable with a female, and I'd love to refer you on. I'll see you next time I communicate.